Good morning, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. As promised, this is going to be the video on rebuilding the front brakes and also doing some servicing on the front wheel bearings of my 1997 Ford E-150 Econoline. And without further ado, let's get started. So, I put a posting up on the channel using, I think it's the community tab, where I was investigating some stuff, and then I saw this on the front driver's rotor, and you're not coming back from that. You can't even turn it and save it. So I had to get new rotor hubs, which I did. Now notice I said rotor hub. So this vehicle is old enough that the hub has not been separated from the rotor. So when we get into this, not only when we go to take the rotor off for the brakes, we're gonna have to open up the hub, which means you're gonna need a wheel seal. This is an opportunity, if you've got a higher mileage vehicle, to change out your bearings, or at least check them. We're going to repack the bearings, get fresh grease in them so that they'll be okay for just that much longer. And we're also going to change out pads and the rotor hub. But you're doing actually two separate jobs here, and it's not because I want to do that, it's because you have to do that. And also, this is a good opportunity to check and service your wheel speed sensor. If you haven't, or if it's bad, or it's not reading right, it's an opportunity to get in there and see what's up. And I will cover that. So first thing we got to do, I already have this in the air. Don't get under it until you have a jack stand. But we're going to get this hub off, this hubcap. Let's get some pliers, not pliers, get a pry bar, get under it. Just kind of get it loose. And that brings you to here. So this is our dust cap, dust and grease cap for the hub part of the assembly. And we'll get into that in a minute. But we need to get our tire off, we need to get our jack stand in position, and then we'll go ahead and remove the braking components, and then we'll get into this. So use your tool of choice. This is a 21mm lug. So if you got an impact, use an impact. If you got a good old-fashioned lug wrench, do that. Whatever you got to do, these need to come off. There's 5 of them, and I'll bring you back when I'm done. So when you do take the tire off, make sure you try not to clip this. You can, if they're not in correctly, you can accidentally rip them out. And it's not the end of the world if that happens, but it's kind of annoying, so try not to do that. All right, as you can see though, we have that same pattern of deep pitting and grooving all across this rotor. It's in really bad shape. I thought it was in better shape than it was, but no, it's pretty bad, so this has got to come off. Before we do anything else, you'll notice we got to get a jack stand in. So let's do that. Kind of. Yeah, and I was lifting off this post here. Got to put it somewheres. Let's mix it up a little bit. Let's put it on the lower control arm. There we go. So we'll leave it right there on the lower control arm. Point is, jack stand needs to be somewhere so that you can, because jacks are only meant to lift things up. They're not meant to hold them forever. So that's why we have jack stands. So I'll get my fingers and toes clear. I'm going to let this loose to make sure this is going to be stable. And then we will proceed with disassembly. Alright, I think we're good. So now I got a couple things we need to do here. So we have, officially speaking, to get the caliper off, which is this guy right here, We have a pair of 13mm bolts that are back here. See if I can get the camera to do its thing. Here we go. So there's your top one, and if it'll focus, there's your bottom one. Pair of 13s, get those out. And then this is going to be a booger bear to try to get off. I suggest a pry bar. Kind of work it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to get it off. The other thing that's going on here is, you see this wire? This is your wheel speed sensor. And you see it's tied in along your brake line. So you're going to want, well, what I'm going to do anyway, is I'm going to disconnect it up here. There are two 8mm bolts that hold this thing in. There is one right up here, and this is just a guide. It doesn't really hold anything in. Then the one that means business is down here, right there actually. And if your wheel speed sensor is anything like mine, it's going to be a battle to get it out. So I suggest some penetrating lubricant and a lot of wiggling and a lot of patience and some prying and some swearing, and it'll come out. Because currently I have ABS codes for both of the front sensors. I pulled the driver. It was really nasty. I've cleaned it and put it back in. See what we get. I have the parts on the way. That will be another video. But who knows, maybe I'll clean it and I can get a tiny bit more life out of it before I gotta put in new ones. But you want to get that out of the way, because otherwise you've got another wire that you're fighting when you go to position your caliper. Because when you take the caliper off, again, that's this guy, and you go to sit him down, you're not supposed to put strain or pressure on this rubber brake line. So generally I just sit it up here, but a little harder to do when you've got another wire up in the business. So anyway, I'm gonna work on that, and then I will bring you back once this wheel speed sensor is out and the caliper is off. Alright, let's take a look. So this is the side that faces outwards, because it's got this lock on it. This pad still had a little meat on it, not much. It was pretty close to needing to be changed. And this one was just about gone. This one would have been sling-a-ling-a-linging against the back here pretty soon. So we have an uneven wear pattern. That means the caliper wasn't sliding correctly on its pins. This is backed up here. We have a hole that's been worn into these boots. So that means I gotta go track down some boots, because I don't have another set. I don't have any laying around in the junk drawer. That's great. Let's see here, what else? I would leave these here for now, so that way you just know how it needs to sit when you go to put your new brake hardware on, because you don't want to reuse this. Should get some new ones, whatever brake pad kit you bought. But see, we got a little bit better visibility now on our sensor here, and we're going to get a little bit more once we get the rotor hub out of the way. The problem is it goes in the knuckle, and you don't have a lot of access to the knuckle until you get everything out of the way. Alrighty, so what I did to remove this on the other side, I already did one side just so that I wouldn't lead you astray, since brakes are kind of important, is I took a mallet so I wouldn't dent in this metal, and I used the mallet to get this to crack just a little bit, to come out just a bit. And once I had it come out a bit, I switched to my pry bar and kind of pried my way around until I could just pull it out. So we're going to do the same thing again, and I'll bring you back once I have this off. Alrighty, so once you get the grease cap off, this is what you're greeted with. There's a cotter pin normally right there. I have already taken it out, or I thought to. turn the camera on. So there it is. You can use some needle nose locking pliers or just needle nose pliers to get it out. So the next thing that has to come out is going to be the castle nut, which is what that pin was holding. And then you get to the actual axle nut, which is going to be a 27mm. Now you may be thinking, wait a minute, that was loose, holy cow, the world's ending. Not so. It's actually done that way by design. You will need to tighten it down at one point to take care of something called preload. I will go over that when we get there. But let's go ahead and get this off. And then there's a big old flat washer behind that. And then behind that is the first of 2 axle bearings, or wheel bearings as they are called. It's the smaller of the 2. Big one's in the back, and you can't get it out until you break the wheel seal. So let's get, sorry, that off. Now the good news here, when I look at this grease, it looks good. It's definitely old and it's been around, but it looks good. It doesn't look, I'm sure I'm glad I had that there. So when you slide your bearing out, you want to take care that either you take it out by hand or paper towel, something, because if you get dirt on this, then you're going to have to hose it down with brake cleaner and get the crap out, because if there's even the tiniest speck of dirt in there, it'll grind against your roller bearings and you're in for a bad day. So on that note, you'll see kind of piling stuff in the dust cap here. Number one thing we want to do, kind of hide the bearing in there, put stuff on top of it so the bearing stays somewhat protected. And then I got a fan running, so that's why it's just kicking around. But until you're ready to mess with it, it's not a bad idea just to go ahead and cover it so stuff doesn't get on it. So I'm going to need 2 hands to take the rotor hub off, but at this point you can take it off. It'll come off now, and we can just slide this out. So 2 hands, it's going to be kind of heavy. Remember, you still have a bearing in the back, and I'll show you that in a second. If you are replacing your bearings, then you don't care. You'll just put new ones in. If you're reusing your bearings, take care, because if for some reason you're trying to Superman this off, you still could damage the rear bearing as you take it off. So be nice, just pull it straight out towards you, and then once you're clear of the spindle, which is this part in the middle here, just set it aside. Alrighty, here is our spindle in its full glory. We will be cleaning this up with some towels and brake cleaner, get that nice and shiny. Make sure we don't see any weird wear patterns on it or anything like that. I mean, if that happens, that's bad, because then you need a new knuckle, but I digress. Here's the back half of our rotor hub. There is a wheel seal. That's what that green lip right there is. And then inside of that, that is our rear bearing. You're not going to be able to get that out without removing the wheel seal. And we'll cover that in a little bit. You want to be careful when you do that, because you don't want to accidentally damage your rear bearing. And also, that really scary fuzzy looking thing right there, that is your wheel speed sensor, and that's what the other side looked like when I finally broke it loose. It just was not real pretty. So what I'm going to try to do, since I have access from the side, you see how it's kind of rusted in place, is I'm going to take my mallet, and when I've been saying mallet, I really mean a mallet, not a hammer. So I have a rubber mallet here, but you could probably also use a wooden mallet. But since these absorb a lot of the energy when you hit something, they don't mark on stuff, they don't dent and damage stuff. So it's good when you need that softer touch. I'm going to try to pop this loose now that, clean it up, lube it, and then try to kind of wiggle pop it out so that I don't damage. There's a washer type thing on the back of the knuckle that's attached to the wheel sensor. I don't want to pry that up. I kind of ding that up a little bit on the other side. So I want to try to do this a bit cleaner. But there is a solid reason why it may not be working. It's a magnetized sensor, and that's why there's all this rust sticking to it, and that may have interfered with its ability to do its job. Because what it does... Oh, well... Okay, there's no tone ring here. That would be why this wasn't working. I don't see a tone ring. Okay. Was not expecting that. A wheel speed sensor, the way it works is, you saw it has a magnet tip, and what they're supposed to be is mounted back here. They're supposed to be basically something that looks like a gear, and it's called a tone ring. And what happens is as this spins, and because there's a magnet pickup right next to it, it makes an electric charge that registers as a voltage. The sensor sends that voltage to the engine, to the ABS computer. The ABS computer can make sense of that and understand how fast a wheel is spinning, so that in an emergency braking situation, it can say, oh wait, this thing's locking up, I need to let it go. Or wait, nope, I can grab it, and then grab onto it. That's why you get that pulsating feeling when your ABS system turns on, because it's grabbing and letting go of the wheel really, really fast. But that only works if there's a tone ring. And I don't see one. And the other side definitely had one when I installed it with the new rotor. So, as far as I remember, when I ordered these rotors online, they did not have like a passenger and driver. It was the same part number, which means that somebody, either I'm missing something, or somebody replaced this hub, rotor hub, with the wrong one. The further I dig into this van, the more surprises I find. Anyway, let me dig into this a little bit. I've been chattering here for a while, and we're gonna clean this up, pop that out and clean it up. We're gonna get this bearing out, kind of hidey-holy it and clean it up, and then we're gonna work on repacking the bearings with fresh grease. There's two ways I want to explain how to do, and then we'll start rebuilding everything with the new rotor hub, the new pads, all that good stuff. Alright, so that is the actual wheel seal, and what I did to get it out is, you see that this lip here? I put my screwdriver against that, and the mallet, bent it in until I could actually get the screwdriver down in there, and then I pried outward against this metal ring here. Kind of got that out of the way, and the way I did it, hopefully I did not damage the races here on our big bearing. Now in my case, these bearings don't have a ton of miles on them. They only have about 65,000 or less, because I think somebody was in here on the passenger side. I'm seeing signs that somebody was in here playing. Grease didn't look as bad, so anyway, this is out now, so I will clean it up with a little bit of brake cleaner, and then I'll spin it in my hands to make sure that it spins okay and I don't hear any weird noises when I spin it. And then it's going to be time to repack this bearing, because once you repack it, you go ahead, you drop it in the back of your new rotor hub, and then you got to put your wheel seal on. So that's what we're doing, and I will bring you back when I'm ready to do some bearing packing. Okay guys, this is the new rotor hub. It's a Bindex. This is actually OEM, and it certainly cost OEM. But what I wanted to show you was this gear looking thing. This is the tone ring that I was talking about earlier. The rotor hub that just came off is missing this. I don't know if it cracked and fell apart, or if simply the part that the guy bought and put on was not right. But without this, the wheel speed sensor will not work. You will get an ABS light and you have no cruise control and no ABS. So from the point when the guy put that on, his ABS didn't work and he did not have cruise control. I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but this is where we're going to drop in our new bearing here, and then we'll put the wheel seal on top, and then we put this entire assembly on the spindle. But we want to wait until we have everything ready to go to do that, so that we can just button it all up. Alright folks, one thing I almost forgot to mention is this is the old rotor hub, as you can see, but on your new rotor hub, what you need to do is look inside of it and make sure it already has some races pressed in for your bearings. A race is basically a metal ring, and they act as the cap for the bearings so that they sit snugly and don't get squished out of shape inside as they're sitting on the spindle. So you see, I don't really have anything to point with, but you see this metal ring right here that I'm touching. That's the race for the rear bearing. There will be one on the other side of this on the front for the front bearing. And these days, pretty much all rotor hubs that require a race to do bearings, they have the race pre-installed. They take care of that for you. But if you buy a super cheap one or just an oddball, it may not have those races pressed in. And if they're not pressed in, you're going to need to go get those races from your local parts store and press them in somehow. And generally you actually need like a hydraulic press to do it. But just be aware of that. Check for it. When I was a much younger man, I had a RX-7, and I did not know about all this, and I bought some new rotor hubs for it, and they did not come with races. So I kept putting the bearings in, and it would feel good, but just as soon as you tried to drive on it, the wheel looked like it was trying to fall off, and that's because the races weren't there. So very important, make sure you check this. Alrighty guys, there are two ways that I know of to pack a bearing. There's the old way, the old school way you do by hand, and then I have this tool. This is a bearing packer tool. It's not hydraulic, it requires your muscle to move it. It's made by Lyle. It can be found for anywhere between $20 to $45 depending on where you buy it from. And it is made to fit in a vise if you have a vise that is big enough to let the vise do the grunt work for you. There, all the blah 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 out of the way. This is how it works. You're going to take it, you put your bearing in with the tapered side down, like so. It'll work up to a 3.5 inch bearing according to the packaging. So just move it here out of the sun. You're going to take your handle. It does have a threading on it, but if it doesn't thread, that's okay. And then you're just gonna push. So you just push. And if you push hard enough, the way it's designed is it will force grease from this reservoir here, which is all brake grease, and it will force it up and through and out the top of the bearing, so that it thoroughly has grease between all the little roller bearings inside of the races. So this is definitely a way to do it. It's the way I'm going to do it. I will talk about the other way you do it. It's the old school way when you don't have any tools. And what you do is you get yourself a tub of brake grease. This is from the local O'Reilly's. This meets the spec. You need grease that meets NLGI GC-LB, which is basically high temp heavy duty. Grease with moly in it, basically. In this case, bright red, kind of a pink. You're going to take a blob of that, and you're going to put it in your palm. And then you're going to take your bearing. I'll go ahead and use this one here. Oh, well, yeah. You're going to take your bearing, and you're going to take the edge of it, and you're going to scrape it deep into your palm. Drag it across your palm till it hurts, till you feel it scraping your skin off at an angle to force that grease to come in. And when you see the grease starting to come out the bearings on the other side, then you move to a different section of the bearing, and then you repeat it. And you need to slap more grease in your palm. That's what you do, and you just scrape against the surface of your palm. It's not very fun, and if you don't get it quite right, you wind up rubbing your hand raw before you get the bearing packed, but it works. But I got kind of tired of doing that, so that's why I have this. And I just had a brainwave. My vise is not big enough to hold this, but I bet I could take a C-clamp and get the same results. So let me try that. Alright, so survey says C-clamp works really well. You see how grease has been forced out in the entire circle there? So I know that every single roller bearing in there is packed with grease. So this has been successfully repacked. I'm not going to really wipe any of this off because you want a little bit of extra grease around the bearing. What happens as your wheel is spinning is this grease warms up, it gets liquidy, and then it kind of flows back and forth through the rotor hub from the back to the front, front to the back. That's why I need a wheel seal. So a little bit of extra grease is good. Too much, not so good, because it creates enough pressure. It will cause your dust cap to pop off in the front, and then that can cause lots of problems. But this looks good. I'm going to go drop it in the rotor hub, the new one, and then I'll go grab the wheel seal and pop that into place, and I'll bring that on over, and we'll just keep moving right along. Alright, so here is our new wheel seal. It is a Timken 4148 wheel seal. Timken generally makes pretty good kit. So Timken and 4148. So when you go to put this seal in, the really old school way is take a small hammer and kind of go around, and if you do it just right, it'll bite, and you can kind of work it in. Or what you can do, if you have something, is get something that covers the diameter of the seal so that you can kind of push it all down at once, like that. And then get your mallet. And there we are. Now it looks like this is not fully seated. I'm seeing it's a little high on this side. So I'm going to give it another tap or two. So I will inspect the edge, make sure that we're fully seated. Or what we can also do now is, since we're more or less seated, we can do that walk around and make sure we're good. And make sure that when you put your bearing in here, because at this point if you messed up, you got to rip your seal out and you need a new one. The bearing goes tapered in down. So this should be the back of the bearing, so to speak, and then the tapered nose goes in. If you put it in backwards, you're gonna know when you try to stick it on the spindle, because it won't fit. So definitely want to make sure you get that right. Alright, I'm gonna give this a few more taps, and then I'll bring our assembly over to the spindle there and work on getting that all in. I need to pack the front bearing first though, So that way we don't have a long period of time where this is just kind of trying to slide off the spindle, because that gets super annoying. Okay guys, so here is our rotor hub. It's on. It's going to try to slide forward on you. So what you'll want to do is take your bearing, your second one, kind of slip it in there. That beefs it up so it will stop trying to run away on you. And then you're going to want to make sure it's pushed far enough back that you've got some threads. And then you're going to spin on your axle nut. And then we're going to do a sequence with that axle nut called preloading to make sure we get our bearings seated, but at the same time make sure we don't have them too tight to where they're going to burn out. Alright, so I forgot flat washer first, then axle nut. And what you're going to do is you're going to tighten this axle nut until it's tight, to where this really don't want to spin very well. So where it's tight. Yeah, there we go. So you get it that tight. You don't want to leave it that way. You'll burn them out. So what you do then, once you get them real tight so that the bearings are seated, you're going to back it off a little bit. And then go ahead and put your castle nut on. So just like that. So now if you spin it, spins well, the bearings are seated, you put your castle nut on, and life is grand. They're not too loose, they're not too tight, you're good to go. Now this is called preload procedure. There's a ton of different ways to do it. This is the way I am doing it today. If you go online, there's, like I said, a lot of different ways you can do this. You'll get a bunch of different opinions on how to do it. So if you want to use my way, use my way. If you don't want to use my way, that's fine too. So the last step we got to do here to secure this whole assembly to keep it flying apart is we need a cotter pin. This is from a cotter pin kit I have. I have to go this big because otherwise the head's small enough to slip through. This one will not. So what my suggestion to you is you can trim this with something, or if you think the original cotter pin is in good enough shape, you can use that. I prefer not to do that. I prefer to do a new pin with every job. But I'm going to trim this a little bit, and then I will curl the ends of the cotter pin around so it can't slip out, and then we can throw in a slug of grease in our cap, and then we'll use our mallet, get our cap back on. And at that point, the axle part of this job is done, and we can actually work on the brakes part of this job. Alright, if you made it this far, congratulations. We are done with the axle part of this job. Give yourself a pat on the back. Now we're actually going to do the brake part. So first things first, you need to take some brake cleaner and on front and back clean the entire rotor surface. There is a grease, a protective layer they spray down to keep these from rusting while they're sitting on the shelf, but it interferes with your braking. So you get some brake cleaner, clean that off front and back, and then we'll go ahead and we're going to service these clips. We're going to replace these boots that are blown out, and then we got to separate these pins because mine came out with the collars, which I don't think it's supposed to. And we got to also push back this caliper so that we can push back the piston so that we can slide the caliper on after we load up 2 brand new brake pads. So we got a couple different things to do, so let's dig into it. So with the pins not installed, these boots just can be pulled straight through, no problem. So I cleaned the rotor surface, and now we are moving on to this. I had to swing by the local parts store to get these boots. They are, at least for Duralast, they are a 16122. Came with 4. I'm only going to need 2 of them because the 2 on the driver's side were fine. So I'm just going to slide these back in there, 2 new ones. And then the next step we're going to tackle that's somewhat of a pain is we're going to push this caliper back. It's kind of a pain because it's messy. You wind up getting brake fluid everywhere, and it's annoying, but it's not actually that hard. Alright, so getting this in wasn't that bad. I've got it pushed through enough that I could take my needle nose locking pliers, pulled enough out so then I could grab it with my fingers and then pull it the rest of the way. That went easy peasy lemon squeezy. These are now the way they ought to be. And now we're going to work on this. So to push back, there's two ways I know of to push back a piston. There's what I call the right way, and then there's what I call the wrong way. The wrong way is you take the cap off your master cylinder up in the engine bay, and then you put a C-clamp on this, and you just push the fluid out of it. Any nasty fluid back up into your braking system. The other way you do this is you pop the bleeder on the back of the caliper and then squish it, and what happens is that nasty fluid goes out your bleeder instead of up into your lines and your master. It just makes a mess on the floor. Alright, so your bleeder is located there, and if it's an original caliper with original bleeder, that's going to be a 3/8 to crack it open. So I'm going to go ahead and crack it open, and then I'm going to use my big old C-clamp that I mentioned earlier that I used for the bearing packing, and I'm gonna squeeze this piston flat, and then I will cap the bleeder again, close it off so that we're not dripping fluid everywhere, and then this will be ready to go. And we'll go ahead after that and we'll switch out these hardware clips. Once the clips are switched out, we can go ahead and load brakes and then load caliper and put it all back together. And there you go. So it has now been pressed all the way in. Make sure when you're using the clamp, the head of the C is what goes across the piston, not the pushing part, because there is a risk that if you try to put all that push on this little area of space, that you can actually snap the piston. Ask me how I know. I've seen it happen. So you want to distribute that force as much as you can across the C. So there you have it. It's pushed out as promised. It made a mess. Flip side is that if you didn't already flush your brake system doing something else, you have now flushed all the garbage out of the caliper, or most of it. So that's out of the way. So now we turn our attention to these clips. They're just push on, push off. You should have a hardware set that should have come with whatever pads you're putting in. If they did not come with those, if you think these are in okay shape, you can reuse them. I do not recommend that. I always recommend using new hardware when you put on new pads. Your local car part store should have what is called a front disc brake hardware kit that should have these. It will come with these, and it will come with these if it's the whole kit. I know AutoZone carries it because that's what I was going to buy before I realized I could just buy these. So anyway, I'm going to do that, and then we'll go ahead and I'll get the pads out. We'll slap those in. Okay, now we have pads. This is getting exciting. Now when we get here, you see how there's a bit of a gap on these hooks, these booger hooks? You want to slide the fingers of the caliper under those, okay? The fingers should wind up kind of centered around these holes. Around-ish is good because ish will still let you line up with your caliper bolts that are required to actually hold all this together. You need two hands to do this. I don't have my tripod, but just swing her down, line it up. Remember, your bolt holes are here in the back. Your top one, it'll focus. Focus. There. Your top one's here, and then there's another one down at the bottom. So, do it to it. Alright, so at the end of this, you're left with these two slide pins. They need to be greased up with brake grease because the caliper does float on them. So they need to be able to float. Otherwise, your boots are going to tear and wear out. So grease these up, then put them in their boots and tighten up with a 13mm ratchet. Alright, if you made it this far, give yourself a golf clap. We're officially done with switching out hardware, but at this point we have a piston that is fully collapsed. We need to make sure we don't push any air in the system, so we need to pop our bleeder back open, let it gravity bleed. So just pop it open, let the air come out naturally until you got a nice solid stream of brake fluid coming out. Cap it back off, then we can pump the brake a few times. That will finish bringing the piston out to where we're gripping, we're putting pressure on pads, and then we're going to put the wheel back on. We got to put the wheel speed sensor back in, and then clean up, then test drive. Alright, so I've got that wheel speed sensor rerouted, plugged in, life is good. Very last thing you need to do is pump your brakes to get this piston back in place. So you should get something like this where you can turn it by hand, but there is drag resistance from the brakes. That's what you're looking for. If it goes whee, then something's wrong, because that means your pads aren't biting. Alright, if you made it here, congratulations. Not only did you do a complete rotor hub replacement and clean up bearings and pack everything up and take care of the caliper and do new hardware, but you also took care of your wheel speed sensor. So basically you overhauled the knuckle. Good job on you. And hopefully, because I got to do a test drive, see where we stand, this is a good repair. Alright guys, that is going to do it for this episode where we, depending on what you were planning, we replaced the wheel speed sensor, redid the rotor hub, redid the brakes, and serviced the bearings inside the rotor hub for my 1997 Ford E-150 Starcraft conversion van with the 5.4 Triton 8-cylinder. Oh. Anyway, this video was entertaining. If you learned something, if you found it fun, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. That helps to grow the channel so I can bring more content like this to you. Please also leave a comment. I like to read them, I like to learn from them, and I like to reply to them. And remember guys, I make mistakes like buying this blasted thing, so you don't have to. I'll catch you guys next episode.